Hello and welcome to a new video on the channel. Today, I present to you Pandora and the Eternal War Part 12. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and share it with your friends. Now let's dive straight into the story. Heroes and villains. The world is not black and white. Through barely open eyes, Pandora glances over at Camilla, sensing that she, too, is still conscious. Pandora decides that Camilla deserves to be the victor, or at least she doesn't mind the draw. As the silence stretches on, the commentator finally declares the match a tie. A faint smile plays on Pandora's lips as she reflects on how formidable Camilla proved to be. She hadn't expected her to be so difficult to defeat. Yet this experience has shown her that she need not fear facing stronger opponents if she amasses enough abilities. The advantages of possessing multiple Arcanist powers have become increasingly clear to her, and the thought of stealing even more powers from aspiring heroes fills Pandora with restless excitement. Pandora knows that taking these abilities is morally wrong, that each stolen power robs a future hero of their potential. But in this moment, she doesn't care. Her thoughts are consumed with a burning need for revenge, to strip away everything from those who took everything from her. Her hatred for the Heroes organization, their corrupt heroes and twisted political motives, grows with each passing day. She once thought that her anger toward them might fade over time, but it hasn't. In fact, the more she learns about the heroes and their warped ideals, the deeper her resentment becomes. Pandora is convinced that, even to the most naive, it should be obvious that the world is far too complex for simple notions of good and evil. Pandora also realizes that voicing her views aloud could make others see her as insane. The Heroes Association, presenting its members as paragons of righteousness and selflessness, is willing to bury countless secrets to maintain this image. While Pandora lacks direct evidence, she's certain that in a world as unjust as this one, there's no way that even those who call themselves heroes could remain free of corruption. As she reflects on this, Pandora feels herself being transported elsewhere on a stretcher. Internally, she smirks, thinking that the world is far more likely to be painted in complex shades than in simple blacks and whites. Just as there are countless colors, there are endless motivations, ideals, and philosophies driving people forward. In the medical room, Pandora is examined, and a wave of unease washes over her. She fears her hybrid nature might be detected. Still, she remains still, confident that her chaotic energy will go unnoticed. She knows she appears fully human, with her vampiric wings no longer visible. While she's certain of her human appearance, the tension persists, and she wonders if the sensors might somehow pick up something unusual. But she also realizes that sooner or later, her abilities will likely come under scrutiny, so she'd rather discover any risks now than face surprises down the line. For now, with only a few minor cuts to bandage, no one seems to have noticed anything amiss. Don't worry, sir. Your granddaughter will wake up without any issues. She's just exhausted and needs rest. A nurse reassures the figure standing beside Pandora's bed. Pandora can hardly believe that her ability to retreat into her inner world has worked so well. Naming this technique osmosia had proven more useful than she could have anticipated. Even while in a state of near sleep, she can still hear everything happening around her. As Pandora senses that no one is nearby, she begins to awaken slowly from her inner dream world, taking in her surroundings on the hospital bed. The night has fallen, and the colossal moon casts a bright silvery light over the entire futuristic metropolis of Alpha, bathing it in a sterile, almost magical glow. Although she can't quite place it, something about this beautiful landscape feels enchanting to Pandora, as if it holds a mysterious charm. She swings her legs down from the hospital bed and rises gracefully. Pandora finds it incredibly practical that she can retreat into her inner dream world of the Arcanist, which makes her appear unconscious to the outside world whenever she wishes. She hadn't known this was even possible, so this newfound ability pleasantly surprises her. Instinctively, Pandora steps towards the window and places her hand on its cool, smooth surface. She senses the familiar chill that heralds the approach of winter, and a tingling feeling of change pulses in the moonlight, carrying a strange energy that seeps into her bones. An icy shiver runs down her skin, and for a moment she feels exposed, as if stripped bare. The feeling of change rises and falls within her, a deep awareness that she is vulnerable, even helpless. The sensation intensifies around her wing bones, where she can feel something taking shape, as though her body is preparing to manifest. This isn't the familiar aura of magic, the power that momentarily alters the world's laws to suit one's will. Instead, this energy feels like something else, a force that creates entirely new rules. Pandora already has a vague sense of what is forming within her wings, yet her mind resists fully comprehending it. It feels as if it will take more time for the wings to break through her skin. Realizing it's pointless to search for another answer, Pandora resigns herself to the fact that her wings are somehow connected to chaos. A slight disappointment washes over her. A part of her had hoped they might be like Seraphina's, soft and beautiful. Her mother's wings had always felt so gentle. What am I supposed to do now? Pandora wonders aloud. I'm not tired, so what should I do? She knows she should drink blood soon, but getting it isn't exactly simple in this city. Yet, being in a hospital might make things easier. She just needs to find the refrigeration room. With a casual gesture, Pandora conjures an illusion of herself lying in the bed, then moves to the window, opening it and stepping out into the cold night. Pandora feels the platform beneath her feet begin to dissolve. The shimmering energy field crackles and fades, and she steps forward just as the last part of the platform vanishes. She glances back at the window, noticing that her reflection is absent. Only her pupils are visible. She looks down and realizes her body is invisible. The invisibility, surprisingly, works well with her sense of balance, allowing her to walk on air, although it requires her full focus to keep each step steady. I've got it! There must be unregulars in this hospital, too, Pandora thinks to herself. Pandora reaches into her pocket, pulling out her bracelet and pressing the small pearl in its center. The holographic display that appears in midair feels strange to her touch, but with a few practiced gestures, she navigates to what she needs. After only 2 rings, Camilla answers. Did I wake you? Pandora asks. No, I was still awake. But thanks for letting me win the Meta Cup, Camilla replies with a hint of sarcasm. What do you need? You don't call me just for a chat, do you? Right. I need you to tell me where the unregulars with the most unstable powers are. The stronger, the better, Pandora says. Sure, but why? Camilla responds, curiosity piqued. Well, I'm not entirely sure this is safe to discuss over this connection. I'll explain another time, Pandora replies cautiously. You don't have to worry too much about our line being tapped. First, it would only happen if there were serious suspicions of terrorism. And second, I've rerouted our communication through secure nodes. I could give you the technical details, but I doubt they'd mean much to you, Camilla assures her. A few moments pass before Camilla finds the information Pandora needs. Got it. There's an unregular named Richard Schneider on the 3rd floor, room 24. While Pandora listens, she deactivates the hologram but continues to speak, using her ability to limit the sound waves to reach only the microphone, keeping the conversation as private as possible. She knows she might be a bit paranoid, but she'd rather be overly cautious than make a critical mistake. Have you told anyone about me? Pandora asks. No, why would I? If I did, I wouldn't have you for myself anymore, Camilla responds instantly, almost possessively. I want to tell you more about myself, but I'm not sure how. I don't know if I'm ready, Pandora admits softly. Pandora feels her heart skip a beat, a strange sensation she can't quite understand. She's uncertain what it means or what Camilla truly represents to her. This unfamiliar feeling in her chest is something new, and Pandora doesn't know why she said what she did. She wonders if this is what Camilla feels for her, but she's unsure. Thanking Camilla, Pandora ends the call and finds herself standing before the window, separating her from the unregulars. She contemplates her approach. What should I even say to them? They won't simply accept me erasing their powers without some kind of trade, she thinks. Hovering by the window, Pandora ponders her own intentions. As she stands there, time feels stretched, almost eternal. She wonders about the world she wants to create if she gains the powers she desires. A vision forms, a world where strength doesn't rule over the weak. Maybe, just maybe, if I become strong enough to understand this world, I could lead it into an era of peace, Pandora muses. Am I even the right person for that? Is there an ideal path to power? And if I do reshape this world, will it make me a saint or a demon? Doubts creep in, and Pandora begins questioning herself. My heart stays cold when I think of killing someone. I could kill anyone in this moment if it would benefit me. Does that make me a madman among saints? Or a saint among madmen? She wonders, uncertain whether her ruthlessness is her own madness or merely a reflection of the world around her. With a swift gesture, she dismisses the troubling thoughts and transforms her appearance. Dark smoke coils around her, creating an illusionary figure that seems to materialize out of shadows. Pandora is well aware that her illusion has no solidity, allowing her to pass through objects, so she layers it over her existing invisibility as a test. It works. She can step aside easily from the second illusion of a man. Pandora places her hand against the window and taps gently, waking a boy lying in bed. Startled, he quickly composes himself, staring at the figure cloaked in black and purple smoke. Curiosity lights his eyes. No one has ever approached him voluntarily, as he's been seen as a danger to those around him. But now someone has come, apparently wanting to speak with him. For the first time in his life, after years of isolation, he looks up with genuine interest. If you want to be free of your power, I can remove it. Just open the window and take my hand, the figure says. Who are you? Asks the boy, who looks no older than 12 or 13. My name is Cascard. I can deactivate or erase powers, Pandora replies, her voice cool and controlled. I'm here to help you. All I ask is that you keep this to yourself and offer me your aid when I need it in the future. You could live a normal life, even work for the Hero Association, and someday I'll reach out to you. In her guise as Cascard, Pandora's words carry a calm assurance that convinces him, if only slightly. The boy, trembling with hesitation, reached out and opened the window from inside. If asked at that moment, he would have struggled to put his feelings into words. A mix of hope and curiosity burned brighter than the creeping fear gnawing at the corners of his mind. There was something captivating about the shadowy, smoke-like figure before him, and while doubt lingered, his heart urged him to take a leap of faith. Yet, his hesitation wasn't for himself. It was for the figure standing before him. I don't know if it's a good idea for you to touch me, the boy warned. I can't control my Arcanus. The figure, still cloaked in an aura of dark and violet smoke, replied calmly. I understand your concern. Don't worry. If your Arcanus can't be erased, then you won't owe me anything. Steam rose faintly from his trembling hand as he slowly extended it toward the figure. The promise seemed too good to be true, and yet something compelled him forward. His hand, though hesitant, moved toward the stranger's outstretched one, an unstoppable force fueled by both hope and desperation. When their hands finally met, the boy was surprised by how unexpectedly soft and warm the figure's touch felt. Suddenly, an overwhelming sensation took hold of him. Something deep within his very soul stirred, as though a foreign presence had reached in and wrapped itself around his Arcanus. The boy could feel it, a tentacle of violet flames curling tightly around the glowing green sphere that represented his power. His ability, the source of so much pain and isolation, was now gripped by this otherworldly force. The boy felt something he hadn't dared to in years, the thrill of freedom. For a moment, he was so enraptured by the sight and sensation that he failed to focus on what was truly happening. Slowly, he realized the tentacle was pulling the glowing green sphere of his Arcanus out of him. Fascinated, he watched as the energy left his body, held firmly by the spectral flames. This is fascinating, the figure said, observing the sphere now floating above their palm. Your Arcanus surrounds your skin with a corrosive energy. I can understand why you'd want to get rid of it. But you need to be absolutely certain. If I destroy this ability, it will be gone forever. There will be no undoing it. Are you sure you don't want me to simply deactivate it instead? The boy hesitated, the magnitude of the decision sinking in. He stretched his hand toward the floating sphere as if trying to touch it. But the instant his fingertips neared the energy, a sharp pain made him recoil. His skin burned faintly from just brushing against it. I've removed your Arcanus from your body, the figure continued in an even tone, but it remains intact. If I destroy it now, it will never exist again. It will be irrevocably erased. Alternatively, I can keep it dormant, leaving you the option to reactivate it someday. What's your choice? The boy stared at the glowing sphere, a mix of awe and dread in his eyes. Despite the surreal, incomprehensible nature of the moment, his voice was steady when he finally spoke. Destroy it. I don't ever want it back. The figure nodded, raising their hands slightly. With a subtle gesture, the violet flames tightened around the sphere, compressing it. A faint, otherworldly cracking sound filled the air as the arcanis began to break. The green sphere fractured like delicate glass, splitting into countless glittering shards that fell to the ground. Yet, as they descended, the fragments grew smaller and smaller, vanishing entirely before they even reached the floor. The boy stood frozen, watching in stunned silence. The display was nothing short of miraculous and deeply unsettling. What he had just witnessed defied everything he'd been taught. In this world, abilities couldn't be created or destroyed. They were inherited at birth and dissolved naturally upon death. But here, in this single surreal moment, he had seen the impossible. Speechless, the boy's mind reeled with thoughts. What kind of power did this figure truly wield? And why did they come to him? He knew he had just witnessed something that no one else in this world had ever seen, and that realization sent a chill down his spine. Room 305. Pandora's eyes flicked to the small brass numbers on the door, and the realization hit her like a slow, sinking weight. This isn't the right room. For a moment, she stared at the number, annoyed at her mistake. Of course, I'd break into the wrong one. Typical. Her irritation lingered, but only briefly. Doesn't matter, she decided with a mental shrug. I can just try again another night. What's your name, boy? Pandora asked, her voice deep and masculine as she wore the guise of Cascard. As she spoke, her thoughts danced around the success of the first phase of her plan, which was slowly taking shape. Knowing she couldn't control when or how the heroes would find her traces, she had decided to leave so many that no one could discern which ones truly mattered. In her mind, she called this strategy Nibblewand, a smokescreen. By pursuing multiple subplans, each offering a different way to achieve her goals, she could always pivot if one failed. My name is Adam, the boy replied, his voice filled with gratitude. Thank you so much for freeing me from this burden. I swear I won't tell anyone. Good. Carry on then. Until next time, Adam. Perhaps one day you'll meet my boss, Pandora said in Cascard's voice before disappearing the same way she arrived. As the last wisps of black smoke dissipated, leaving no trace of Pandora's presence, Adam let out a deep breath. Relief washed over him now that his ability was gone, but the encounter had been peculiar, to say the least. He briefly considered telling others who might also wish to have their powers disabled, or even destroyed, yet the promise he'd made held him back, and he resolved to honor his savior's wishes. And then there was that mention of Cascard's boss. If this mysterious figure was as powerful or more powerful than Cascard, Adam shook the thought from his mind as exhaustion finally took hold, and he drifted into sleep. Pandora felt her heart race with excitement and anticipation. The first stop of the night had gone exactly as planned. The next stop was the hospital's cold storage room, where blood bags were kept. Pandora let her heightened senses guide her, carefully avoiding the few nurses roaming the nighttime corridors. When she reached the door of the cold storage room, the scent of blood was unmistakable. Pandora considered her options, seeking a way to enter without drawing attention. First, she created an illusion over the hallway to make it appear as though the door remained untouched. Then, with a flicker of her power, she neutralized all sound, as if the night itself were conspiring with her. To an outside observer, it would seem like nothing happened as Pandora forced the door open with sheer strength. She grabbed a few bags of expired blood and some fresher ones before slipping away without a trace. Minutes later, Pandora perched on the pointed roof of a skyscraper, hundreds of meters above the ground. The height, as always, didn't faze her. If anything, she felt less fear than ever, knowing her wings would soon form. Though she couldn't yet picture their exact appearance, she was certain they would be connected to her chaos energy. Since chaos energy had only ever appeared in shades of violet or black, she suspected her wings would follow suit. Sitting atop the skyscraper, Pandora drank from one of the blood bags, feeling the life essence flow into her. As a vampire, the energy invigorated her, coursing through her body and pooling near her shoulder blades, where she imagined her wings would sprout. Mid-sip, Pandora felt something sharp press against her from inside her jacket pocket. Startled, she carefully pulled out the object. Nearly dropping it into the abyss below, she caught it just in time. Her eyes widened as she stared at the chaos crystal in her hand. "That was close," she muttered, her heart pounding. Had she let the crystal fall, it would have detonated upon impact, a blast infused with chaos energy. Such an explosion wasn't just destructive. It was akin to a radioactive grenade, spreading energy that could corrupt anything it touched. Pandora knew the dangers of carrying such a crystal. If anyone but her handled it too roughly, it would instantly destabilize. Yet within a 2-meter radius of her, the crystal remained dormant, as though her presence suppressed its volatility. Beyond that range, however, it became an unpredictable weapon. "I should eat this thing before it causes trouble," Pandora thought, weighing the crystal in her hand. With a single thought, the violet crystal began to disintegrate. Starting at the edges, its vibrant glow dimmed, and the material collapsed into nothingness. Waves of violet energy surged from the crystal and flowed into Pandora's skin, merging seamlessly with her body. Once the crystal was fully absorbed, Pandora double-checked all her pockets, ensuring there were no more dangerous surprises hiding within. Satisfied that she was now free of any remaining crystals, she allowed herself a moment of relief. Pandora gazed up at the stars shimmering in the night sky, their distant light a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within her. The relentless urge to amass more Arcani's powers surged stronger with each passing moment, refusing to fade. Her thoughts drifted briefly to the next day and the continuation of the Meta Cup. How would the competition unfold? And more importantly, what would the prestigious Helios Academy be like, assuming she could secure her place there? With a slight shake of her head, Pandora pulled herself back to the present, her mind returning to her insatiable hunger for more abilities. She weighed her options carefully, mentally outlining various paths to achieving her goals. The first path was the simplest and most brutal, stealing abilities and killing the victims to eliminate any witnesses. It was efficient, but the risk of drawing attention was high. The second path involved targeting individuals who wanted to rid themselves of their powers. While safer, this approach was slow and inefficient, requiring time and effort to find willing subjects. At best, she estimated she could acquire a handful of D-rank or C-rank Arcanist powers per week, with the average being closer to 1 C-rank per month, not nearly enough to satisfy her ambitions. The third option was to hit densely populated areas, stealing abilities en masse, places like political hubs or major events. However, such large-scale disappearances of abilities would undoubtedly attract dangerous attention. The fourth idea was to hunt monsters outside the city. While promising, this would require unpredictable amounts of time, and there was no guarantee of returning quickly or with worthwhile abilities. Lastly, there was the option of stealing powers from the dead, whether from monsters or humans. This method minimized exposure but had its drawbacks. Abilities harvested from deceased beings were akin to non-renewable resources. Once taken, they were gone forever. In Pandora's mind, Arcanis was like fossil fuels, finite and irreplaceable. Yet unlike oil or gas, abilities regenerated naturally with the birth of new beings. Her thoughts took a darker turn as she considered her own mortality. How long would she live? As a hybrid of human and vampire, her lifespan was an enigma. Would she age like a human or endure like a vampire? Perhaps, she theorized, her vampire form granted her immortality, while her human form caused her to age faster. But this was mere speculation, and no amount of pondering could provide her with a clear answer for now. Pandora shook her head again, forcing herself to focus. The next step was clear. She would visit a graveyard and see how many abilities she could extract from the departed. Her efforts yielded several Arcanis powers, F-rank abilities: good sleep, fast learning, feather fall, noise isolation, thermal insulation, hand camera, basic aiming, and target marking. E-rank abilities: healing hands and metabolism boost. The 10 abilities she gained were intriguing, albeit weak. Pandora attributed their diminished potency to the fact that their original bearers had been deceased for quite some time. She suspected there were more abilities in the graveyard, but those tied to individuals long dead had likely degraded beyond recovery. After all, no Arcanis could drop below F rank and still function. it would cease to exist entirely. Where else could I go tonight? Pandora mused aloud, her gaze narrowing as she searched for answers. There must be more places where fresh bodies with Arcanis powers are brought regularly. Suddenly, inspiration struck her, and she smiled. It was so obvious that she couldn't believe she hadn't thought of it sooner. A monster processing factory, a place where monster parts were turned into gadgets, tools, and building materials. Such locations were teeming with Arcanis remnants and offered a steady, renewable supply. The thought of having access to an endless stream of Arcanis made Pandora's pulse quicken. A smile spread across her lips as she envisioned the possibilities. A place like that wasn't just a target, it was paradise. Pandora sat up, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon where countless factory lights shimmered in the night. The question now was simple. Which of these factories was a monster processing plant? Her gaze lingered until suddenly the lights in one of the buildings went dark. A frown crossed her face as she wondered what it could mean. Rising to her feet, she took a deep breath, then leaped forward. Each jump carried her far, the world beneath her blurring into streaks of light and shadow. The cool night wind whipped past her as she moved, a surge of exhilaration coursing through her veins. Yet, as she approached the site, her mind wandered. In her chest, she felt the unmistakable pull of Arcanis, an instinctual awareness of the power she had already stolen and how much more she could take. But to her surprise, the sensation also told her something unsettling. She was nearing her limit. She estimated only about a quarter of her capacity remained. This forced a troubling question. If she was selective about the abilities she acquired, what would she prioritize? Crackra. The eerie crack of a deep blue lightning bolt split the sky, striking the factory below. A heartbeat later, an explosion ripped through part of the building, sending debris and smoke billowing upward. The scent of burnt flesh invaded Pandora's heightened senses, sickly sweet and suffocating. She instinctively pinched her nose, though she was still meters away. There were advantages to her superhuman senses, sure, but in moments like this, they were as much a curse as a gift. She paused, watching as flashes of plasma fire lit up the factory's shattered walls. Streams of superheated energy burned through the structure, cutting a fiery path to the street beyond. Then one rogue plasma bolt veered toward her. Though the attack came too fast to process fully, Pandora's body reacted on instinct. The ball of plasma stopped midair, crackling and sizzling as if caught in an invisible grip. She blinked in surprise. Wait, I can control plasma? Even if it isn't mine? She mused aloud, staring at the glowing sphere of energy suspended before her. A slow grin crept across her face as she flicked her fingers, sending the plasma bolt hurtling into a nearby abandoned vehicle. It punctured the windshield, leaving a smoldering hole in its wake. Pandora hesitated. The chaos below was escalating, and it was only a matter of time before the Hero Association intervened. Her eyes narrowed as she considered her options. Should I get involved? She murmured. If she did, she decided, she wouldn't be reckless. She'd use her recent spoils, a heat insulation ability combined with her perfected illusion magic, to render herself effectively invisible. In both the visible and infrared spectrums, she would be a ghost. 20 minutes earlier, the factory had been quiet, humming with the low thrum of machinery. A bald security guard yawned, stretching lazily in his chair. Another dull night, it seemed. But as the air shimmered unnaturally, a subtle distortion crept into the room. Before the man could react, something shot out from the darkness. A muffled thud followed, as his body crumpled to the ground like a sack of stones. From the swirling portal stepped a lone figure, a pistol in hand. The intruder's movements were calculated, almost elegant. This was Shadowfinger, a notorious rogue. His piercing gaze swept over the factory exterior until it landed on the glowing logo of Nova Corporation. Nova, one of the 3 largest conglomerates in the world. Shadowfinger's brow furrowed in irritation as he walked past the barrier gates. By the time he reached the building's main entrance, his ability had recharged enough for another short-range portal. With practiced ease, he conjured one portal on his side of the locked doors and another just beyond them, bypassing the obstruction entirely. Alert! Intruder detected on the ground floor, blared an automated voice as crimson alarms flooded the space. Shadowfinger barely flinched. His mind was elsewhere, weighing his options. A squad of armed guards rushed toward him, weapons raised. "Halt! Don't move," one of them barked. He ignored them. The guards exchanged uncertain glances as Shadowfinger suddenly stopped walking. Without warning, a portal opened beneath him, swallowing him whole. "Amateurs," he muttered under his breath, materializing in a sublevel of the facility. His hand grazed the sleek surface of a device at his belt, a gadget given to him by her. The tool allowed him to map out the hollow spaces within the factory. "If they're hiding what I'm here for, it'll be at the deepest point," he concluded grimly. Unlike most of his heists, this mission wasn't about stealing Nova's secrets or technologies. This time, he was here to liberate someone. When Shadowfinger stepped out of the cramped maintenance corridor, what he saw made his stomach churn. Rows of sterile cells lined the walls, each containing individuals clad in white jumpsuits. Their faces were hollow, their spirits battered. His gaze landed on one girl in particular, her green eyes defiant despite the scars of her treatment. Something about her struck a chord in him. This is beyond brutal, even for Nova, he thought bitterly. He hated this kind of cruelty. Children shouldn't have to endure such horrors. They weren't even given names, just numbers stitched into their clothing. Shadowfinger's jaw tightened. "I'll get you out of here," he whispered. Pandora and the Eternal War, Video 12, page 9. The collars clasped tightly around the prisoners' necks are an uncomfortable reminder for Shadowfinger. They bring to mind exclusive execution collars, designed to instantly kill their wearers, be they children, slaves, or something else, should they disobey orders. Shadowfinger, who has witnessed many atrocities in his lifetime, finds himself momentarily stunned. The horrific implications of the collars paralyze him, though only for a few seconds. He quickly regains his composure and begins strategizing on how to rescue the children without endangering their lives. "I need Spider's help for this," he mutters to himself. "What are you talking about, Shadowfinger?" asks Spider, one of his associates who works for the Octat. After Shadowfinger explains the situation, Spider assures him that they will handle it. Moments later, Shadowfinger feels a subtle disturbance near his fallback point. Raising a hand, he summons a pitch-black portal with swirling edges that seem to devour the surrounding light. From the portal steps a man with brown eyes and dark blue hair. Periodic electromagnetic pulses, EMPs, emanate from his body, disrupting the electronics in the collars and the entire building's systems. The devices fall silent, no longer active. Without a word, the man steps back through the portal, his task complete. This irregular ally, unable to control his power, has turned his chaotic talent into a utility. By positioning himself at critical locations, he disables electronics at will. Shadowfinger quickly removes the collars, one by one, and stores them in his pocket dimension. This ensures they won't reactivate, even if they reboot. One child after another, he teleports them to a safe location near one of the Octat's hideouts. The last to disappear through the portal is a woman who reminds Shadowfinger of his younger sister, a bitter pang of memory as she vanishes into safety. Now comes the most dangerous part of his mission, one that even he dreads. Shadowfinger knows the repercussions of his next actions. Releasing a certain prisoner will deliver a significant blow to the Hero Association, yet he takes the risk, motivated not by altruism, but by a desire to cause further chaos. He is determined to make the heroes regret their choices, especially their involvement in child trafficking. Thanks to precise intelligence, Shadowfinger is aware of a secret that many others have missed. One of the most dangerous villains ever recorded is still alive and imprisoned here. What Nova has been doing to her is unclear, but Shadowfinger resolves to free her regardless. The security measures in place might have been an obstacle for anyone else, but not for Shadowfinger. Equipped with advanced tools that detect structural weaknesses and hollow spaces, he bypasses the reinforced steel walls without issue. While his pursuers scramble to input complex codes into locked doors, Shadowfinger is already at the final chamber. Inside, he sees her. The file he read on this prisoner flashes through his mind. Name, Aisha, alias, unknown. Age, 28, gender, female. Family, unknown Arcanis description. Her black and white flames can disintegrate and decay anything they touch. Non-organic matter is broken down into its basic components and rendered inert. Organic material dies rapidly, turning to dust in mere moments. Her ability is classified as A rank, though her destructive nature has made it nearly impossible to measure precisely. Few survive close encounters. Confirmed death toll 134, likely more. Psychological profile: instable, violent, self serving, and driven by an overwhelming will to survive. Shadowfinger gazes at her long white hair, cascading over her shoulders and falling to the metallic platform beneath her. Her eyes are closed, and a mask obscures her mouth. Summoning another portal, he reacts just in time to deflect a plasma shot fired at him. The blast redirects through the portal and strikes the armored walls of her cell, leaving a scorched mark. He notices a hole in the ceiling of Aisha's cell, likely a means of disposing of hazardous waste. Shadowfinger steps into the room, only to be greeted by a hiss as greenish gas begins pouring into the chamber. The toxic fumes sting his lungs, and he hurriedly pulls a gas mask from his pocket dimension. The futuristic device is capable of filtering over 70 types of toxic substances, allowing him to breathe safely. Shadowfinger attaches several ring-shaped devices to Ishka's restraints. As he frees her, her body slumps, and he moves to support her weight. Suddenly, her crimson eyes snap open, glowing with a deadly light. Black and white flames erupt around her hands, and Shadowfinger feels the intensity of her piercing gaze. Realizing the danger, he wisely steps back, opening a portal as a means of escape. Exhaustion slows him down. His ability is no longer strong enough for long-distance travel after so many uses. Pandora and the Eternal War. Video 12, page 10. I've completed my mission. Whatever happens to the guards is none of my concern. They deserve this for imprisoning children, he thinks bitterly. Nova will face the consequences when the truth about their child trafficking comes to light, Shadowfinger reflects. As Shadowfinger exits the factory, an eerie feeling overtakes him. A brilliant flash of light strikes the building, and moments later, black and white flames erupt, devouring the structure. The walls begin to crumble, disintegrating in a manner reminiscent of rapid decay. The bricks appear to dissolve, and the areas touched by the strange flames seem to age in time-lapse. But this isn't the source of the ominous feeling gnawing at him. He can't pinpoint it, but the sensation of imminent danger is undeniable. Suddenly, a blow strikes him, and pain ignites like wildfire. Something incredibly fast grabs him by the throat and slams him back to the ground. The unseen assailant seizes his hand, and it feels as though something is reaching into his very soul, trying to rip something out. He coughs, struggling to find his voice, then manages to ask, "Who's there?" His vision swims in darkness, unable to see a thing. "You have something I want, so stay silent," says a woman's voice, cold and unyielding. I can give you money." Shadowfinger starts, but the words are cut short as he gasps for air. "Shut up, scum. I don't care about your philosophy or your twisted sense of morality," the voice snaps. "You, Shadowfinger, have taken countless lives. That's enough to ease my conscience." Shadowfinger doesn't understand what's happening, but he feels his power weakening with every passing moment the woman touches him. It feels as though she's stealing his ability, a notion he knows should be impossible. Yet, the sensation is undeniable. Pandora lets Shadowfinger drop to the ground, her gaze fixed on the black, amorphous mass, the manifestation of his Arcanus. C-rank Void Arcanus, the ability to create portals between two locations and maintain a pocket dimension for resource storage, Pandora analyzes. The strategic potential of such a power makes it a worthy acquisition. A smile crosses her lips as she considers its usefulness, but her triumph is short-lived. Suddenly, Pandora feels a jarring reaction within her, a resonance between the stolen pocket dimension and her inner dreamscape. The two begin to merge in a way she can't fully comprehend. Her dream world, once a mere mental refuge, feels as though it's becoming real, a tangible place accessible only to her. This realization comes not as knowledge, but as an instinctual certainty. Then, a tearing sound shatters her thoughts. Pandora hears the rush of wings unfolding and the rumble of something collapsing. Turning around, she's confronted by two things she hadn't anticipated. The first is the sight of skeletal black wings emerging from her back. Between the wing bones, where flesh and skin should have been, violet flames burn, flickering with eerie light. The second is the factory's ruins, where black and white flames dance along the collapsed edges. A suffocating presence crashes over her, a predator's aura that sets her instincts ablaze with fear. From the wreckage strides a woman, her crimson eyes glowing menacingly even in the dark. Pandora has no idea who this woman is, nor does she care to find out. Staying here any longer is not an option. With a single thought, Pandora blends plasma and fire, ensuring no trace of her presence remains. An explosion erupts behind her as she takes flight on her skeletal, flame-licked wings, vanishing into the night sky. Pandora hears the rhythmic beat of her wings and a sound that crashes through the air toward her. Her heart races as she recognizes the noise. Pandora isn't sure who this woman is, but the sight of the black and white flames still sends shivers down her spine. She feels that with this Arcanus, she has reached her limit. No more Arcanus can fit into her body. Panicking, she thinks rapidly, trying to figure out what to do and who this woman is who emerged from the factory. Fear blazes in her heart. This must have been an S-rank power. No, this was more than just that. My instincts told me to get out as fast as possible. It still feels like there was no chance I could win that fight. What the hell was that power? It looked like decay or rapid aging. Pandora thinks, stressed. The rush of her wings is calming, and once she's far enough away, the thought strikes her. Why can she even fly? It feels so unreal, flying with skeleton-like wings. It suddenly seems like gravity is watching her sharply, questioning what she's even doing in the air. A moment later, gravity seems to grab at her, pulling her back down with its logic. Pandora registers, even as she falls, that the flames between her wing bones, flames that had been burning, flickered out at the exact moment she wondered why she could even fly. Somehow, it makes sense to Pandora that her wings, which are based on chaos energy, defy the logic of this world. But the fact that she's falling doesn't change her understanding of why this is happening. Great, now I'm falling because I thought about why I can fly. This would have to be one of the stupidest, most bizarre ways to die in this world. What am I going to tell my dad in the afterlife when I splatter like this? Sorry, I was just wondering why I could fly. Pandora thinks sarcastically as she continues to plummet. Well, I could also try to slow my fall with my other Arcanus. Let's see what abilities I have to work with. Pandora thinks. 0.2 seconds later, Pandora finds a solution to her problem. Elegant as ever, she materializes platforms beneath her feet at intervals, slowing her fall with the feather-like platforms, just enough to prevent herself from slamming into the ground and breaking her legs. As the floating air platforms move with her fall, it no longer feels like hitting hard ground. Instead, it feels like the ground is pushing against her, but just lightly. She uses this cushioning to its maximum strength. In less than 0.3 seconds, she slowed her fall enough to survive the impact with minimal long-term injuries. Another 0.5 seconds later, her fall stops completely. Now that I've caught my fall, the only question left is, how the hell do I get rid of these wings? I can't exactly walk around with skeletal, blackened wings unless I'm in a costume contest. Pandora thinks. The solution to the riddle is something her mother, Seraphina, had told her and shown her all those years ago. Pandora focuses on folding her wings, ignoring that they can't close as fully as she wants them to. It only takes a few seconds before she's surprised to feel her wings actually dissolving. The bizarre thing is that the wings aren't gone. They're still there, in an inner material state. Pandora wouldn't be able to say where her wings are now, but somehow, she's managed to shift them into a state where they aren't perceptible in this plane of reality. When Pandora shifts her weight from one foot to the other and reaches back to touch her wings, she feels nothing. The odd thing is, she can still sense the bones of her wings and how they move, even though they're no longer there. It's strange, standing in the air, looking for something that isn't there. Pandora looks down through the bubble-like platform beneath her feet into the depths, and she briefly feels dizzy. She can sense the platform under her feet slowly losing its solidity, and at that exact moment, a new one appears, a centimeter lower than the last, popping into place. The small jolt throws her off balance, but she catches herself before falling from the platform. I should head back to the hospital. After all, they think I'm unconscious from exhaustion. I don't want them coming in later to check my pulse and realizing that my illusion was just an illusion. That would be awkward. I guess I should have thought of that sooner. Oh well, They probably didn't check. I mean, I felt fine, just a little exhausted. That should be reason enough not to check my pulse. Pandora thinks, as she makes her way back to the hospital. When she arrives, she slips through the open window back into her room, about to lie down on her bed. Just then, she hears footsteps, the nurse walking down the hall. As Pandora's hand touches the surface of her illusion, the image of her sleeping self dissolves into white mist. A faint crackle is heard, and then the illusion vanishes completely. At that moment, the door opens, and through the curtains surrounding her bed, Pandora sees the silhouette of a woman walking through the room. The nurse is pleasantly surprised to see Pandora awake and asks how she's feeling if she has any pain. "No, I'm fine," Pandora says, a bit more curtly than she intended. "Well, I'll leave you to rest. Enjoy the night." The nurse says, visibly annoyed and unwilling to chat with a patient at night. This is just what Pandora needs, as she can now lie down in peace. But there's something still bothering her. Pandora extends her hand, and the space in front of her begins to warp, producing a soft crackling sound. This sound gradually shifts into a low, melodic creaking and groaning. The air around her clears with a gentle hum as a two-dimensional tear appears next to Pandora's bed, expanding into a rift. Inside the rift, it appears completely black, yet the edges of the rift resemble shattered glass, flickering in a mesmerizing mix of purple and turquoise light. The play of colors is captivating, and Pandora could watch it for minutes, lost in its beauty. The entire rift seems to be coated in a rainbow-colored soap bubble-like film, shimmering and reflecting the shifting hues. As Pandora gazes more intently, she sees a violet-black sun in the distance, far beyond the rift's edge. A few moments later, she notices stars twinkling within the rift as well. It's a surreal, almost intoxicating feeling that washes over her as she gazes into the rift, which feels like her very own pocket dimension. Pandora can scarcely believe that this world, once only a part of her Chaos Arcanus, is now tangible. Her dream world, which until now had been little more than a lucid dream since she named her Chaos Arcanus Asmosia, has become real. With a sense of wonder, Pandora pushes her hand through the rift, feeling a slight tingle as if her hand is passing through a bubble. As she slides the rest of her body through, she experiences a brief sensation as though she is falling in all directions at once. But then, in a heartbeat, she finds herself standing on solid ground. Looking around, Pandora sees a boundless black starry sky overhead, with a gigantic violet-black sun hovering at the center of the space. Though she feels the sun is not far, it gives off the impression of being immense and distant. Yes, this place is fascinating. It's so cool. I can store things here. And paradoxically, I'm inside myself. It's like saying I'm putting a box inside itself. It doesn't make sense, but it's so amusing. Pandora thinks, her thoughts playful. As she relaxes in this place, she feels something escaping her body, something that had been pressing down on her. To her surprise, it's not just a sensation, it's something tangible. She sees that it's an F-rank Arcanus. Despite how impossible it seems, Pandora can feel that this Arcanus sphere isn't dissolving. Normally, such a sphere would fade with time once outside of a body, but in this dimension, it simply doesn't happen. After a moment of confusion, Pandora focuses on the violet-black sun at the center of the room, realizing that the light emanating from it is infused with chaos energy. This energy seems to prevent the natural process of decay, causing the Arcanus sphere to remain intact. Once her initial excitement fades, Pandora decides to store any E-rank or lower abilities in this dimension, carefully ensuring that only abilities she can't use are kept. She plans to retrieve them later if the effect ever fades, knowing that she can recover them with her paranormal power. She breathes a sigh of relief, grateful that her Alanis abilities come with an instruction manual. Without this, learning how to use these abilities would have been a frustrating task. Pandora smiles as she drifts off to sleep, finally feeling at ease. For the first time since her father's death, she has peaceful dreams. But these dreams become more real as something ancient in her blood stirs, something primal and powerful. She feels as though a part of her is reconnecting with herself. From the distance, a blood-red thread extends and connects with her. The thread then turns dark violet. What in the world does this mean? A woman's voice asks, sounding slightly confused. It seems the blood has changed color, a man's voice responds. Oh no, I can see that myself. But why has it turned violet? It should be red, the woman says. Whatever it is, we should be glad that my niece is still alive. And if you can hear me, Pandora, I wish you. And then suddenly, Pandora wakes up. At the same time, Camilla is having a dream as well, though hers is more of a nightmare. She dreams of the day she lost her first great love. It was a beautiful sunny day, and they were all sitting in the noisy school bus with no indication that anything was out of the ordinary. The children chatted and busied themselves, but Camilla's eyes were only on play. Then, everything slows down. Camilla tries to stand up, desperate to change the course of the dream, to stop it. But the sun darkens and shadows consume everything, erasing the light. She is once again forced to watch as the school bus overturns, and her father, bloodied and exhausted from another battle, grabs her and pulls her away from the carnage. The darkened sun looms threateningly above, and blood stains the forests, eventually turning the world around her into an ocean of crimson. Camilla wakes up, drenched in sweat, her heart racing in fear. But along with the fear, there's another feeling growing inside her. It's a certainty that she never wants to experience that loss again. Pandora is not just an ally now, someone with whom she might finally achieve her revenge on her father. No, Pandora has become so much more. More than just a romantic interest. I want you. I want you. I want you. Only for me. My star. Let's be together, Camilla thinks as she sits up, her mind fixed on Pandora. She doesn't love Pandora for her body, but for her power and character. Two crazy people who are on the same wavelength.
Camilla sat up, her legs swinging off the edge of the bed. She took a moment to gaze out of the window. The skyline of Metropole Alpha stretched before her, a monument to human achievement, or so they claimed. To her, it was a sickening sight, a hive of obedient drones following the orders of the HV Docmar without question. What a night, Camilla murmured as she began to dress. She hesitated briefly before reaching for the door handle. Encountering her father, Theodore, was something she avoided at all costs. His dominance only extended as far as her presence allowed. If he couldn't see her, he couldn't enforce his relentless regimen of training and torment. With that in mind, she devised a simple solution. Camilla opened her bedroom window and climbed out into the brisk morning air. Quietly, she descended the side of the house and crept away from the expansive estate. She paused momentarily, glancing back toward the kitchen, where her father stood with her mother, Sarah. A pang of disdain crossed her face as she slipped out of sight. If only I had been born into a poor family, she thought bitterly. Wealth and status had brought her nothing but suffering. Yet, as impossible as it was to change her past, she resolved to make the most of her present circumstances. Pulling her hood low over her face, she navigated the streets with her gaze fixed on the ground. She didn't need much today, just something cheap from the supermarket to stave off hunger. The thought of enduring breakfast with her father was enough to sour her appetite. On her way, she passed a shop displaying masks in the window. One, in particular, caught her eye, a sleek black mask adorned with swirling purple and gold patterns. Drawn to it, Camilla entered the store. She purchased the mask on impulse, ignoring the evident relief on the shopkeeper's face when she left. Camilla was well aware of the intimidating presence she carried. It was something that had been with her for as long as she could remember, though it had only grown more intense over the past 3 years. Expressing her feelings had become increasingly difficult, except when she was with Pandora. With her, it was effortless. Even now, Pandora lingered in her thoughts. She didn't understand why her mind kept drifting back to her. As she idly chewed on her food, her eyes were drawn to a massive holographic display. The screen buzzed with the latest updates on the Meta Cup. The final round of the Meta Cup will be hosted this year by Nova Corporation and the Helios Academy. More details will be revealed this afternoon, but all participants are required to gather at the Meta Center by 10 a.m., a news anchor announced. Camilla's interest was piqued. The Meta Cup finale was always special, but this year's event seemed to carry an extra air of mystery. As the hours crept by, more and more participants gathered at the Meta Center. Camilla scanned the crowd, searching for Pandora, but she was nowhere to be found in the colorful sea of people. Frustrated, Camilla pulled out her armband communicator and called her. After a brief exchange, they agreed to meet by the giant statue towering 5 meters above the plaza, a tribute to the first X-rank hero. There you are, Camilla said as Pandora approached. Do you know what this is about? Pandora asked, her gaze sweeping over the growing crowd. This can't be everyone from just this city. They must have come from other places, Pandora observed. You're right. These hero candidates are from all over, but I know as much as anyone else about what's next, except maybe she might know, Camilla replied with a sly smile. She didn't need to elaborate. Pandora knew Camilla was referring to the Oracle.
And as they both know, the Oracle is a well-kept secret. Not without reason would the prophecy of the Chaos Child be so strictly guarded by the Hero Association. After all, for the Hero Association, or as its abbreviation goes, HV, the Oracle is one of their most secret and powerful weapons. Since the Oracle operates beyond their league, it is currently not a question of whether the Oracle knows what will come or not, as its abilities seem more complex and are not relevant at this moment. Both Pandora and Camilla know that the Hero Association would never use such a powerful secret weapon for an event like the Meta Cup. Camilla asks who the old man is who came here with Pandora, briefly pointing in Leon's direction. Pandora responds that Leon is officially her grandfather and unofficially the friend of her deceased father. Camilla sees that this weighs heavily on Pandora's heart and doesn't ask further. Camilla turns away from Pandora and looks at the 5-meter-high statue of the first X-rank hero, who was also the founder of the Hero Association. Attention, aspiring heroes. The final of this year's Meta Cup will take place in the F-rank Chaos Zone Rain City. You don't need to worry that the weak chaos radiation in this zone will harm you in any way. Each participant possesses an Arcanus above E rank, so this shouldn't be a problem for a few hours. If anyone experiences health issues, they can immediately press the red button on their bracelet, and professional heroes will come to evacuate them, says a voice from all directions simultaneously. That does sound really interesting, Camilla says when she hears this. What kind of Arcanus is this? One of the creation class, or perhaps one of the support class? Pandora wonders aloud, lightly scratching her chin. Why are you so interested in other abilities and how they work, my pretty? Camilla asks Pandora with a slight sarcastic and romantic undertone. Camilla thinks that she never wants to feel the regret again of not confessing her feelings to her great love in time. Pandora looks at Camilla and says she has an intrinsic motivation to learn a lot about the heroes and understand their powers. As Pandora says this, Camilla gets the impression she is not saying everything. Camilla wonders when the time will come when Pandora will tell her everything. However, Camilla also thinks that she won't complain if she has to wait a little longer. As long as she is the only one by Pandora's side, she has no problem waiting. The sound of rotors reaches them as several helicopters land, inviting the participants to take their seats. Pandora and Camilla watch as the Meta Cup participants board the helicopters one after another. What also catches Pandora's eye is that none of the participants are wearing regular street clothes. Instead, each one is dressed in slightly customized futuristic armor. If the black and white armor from days before seemed sturdy, these look even more so now. Pandora finds it amusing, but also practical to have such armor. Acquiring such armor would definitely be next on her to-do list. Hey, Camilla, do you see those armors? They look really cool. I'd love to have one for private use, Pandora says as she receives armor from a hero and heads toward the changing room. While they are changing, Camilla asks her what she means by wanting this type of armor for private use. Pandora only smirks slightly and says that such armor would always be practical for protection. Camilla smiles as well and says this is regulated under weapons laws and can't just be obtained legally. Pandora thinks it would simply be great to have personal armor that could protect her from certain things like acids or poisons she isn't resistant to. Of course, it would also be practical if the armor could withstand heat, comparable to what her body can endure, as it wouldn't help if the armor burns up before protecting her from poisons. However, Pandora understands that this armor is difficult to acquire and would have to be custom made. These models are more or less just adjusted to the size of the participants, but are more of a general model than a specialized one. For example, Pandora's specialized armor wouldn't need to focus much on heat insulation, but instead on poison and acid resistance. Naturally, it would also need to be made from heat-resistant material, so it wouldn't burn up if Pandora needed to use the armor. Wow, you've got a few scars, Camilla says as she sees Pandora's bare body in the changing room. Pandora, unfamiliar with the concept of nudity or shame, looks down at herself and says she spent some time living in the wilderness. Another woman in the changing room glances over at Pandora and Camilla, rolling her eyes slightly, and says she doesn't mind them being interested in each other, but suggests they save it for somewhere else. Hey, you're the biggest lesbian sister here. Stop being so grumpy, says a small blonde girl whose hair leans more towards silvery blue than blonde. Hey, Camila, why do so many people have such crazy colorful hair and eye colors? I've only just now really noticed, but it looks a bit odd, Pandora says to Camilla. Camilla can't fully answer this herself, but skin and hair colors have always been so colorful, as far back as Camilla can remember. Pandora smirks slightly as she notices the disapproving looks of two girls. She asks Camilla, now fully dressed, what the two girls in the corner have against lesbians. As far as Pandora understands, lesbians are simply two women who find each other attractive. Fundamentally, Pandora has nothing against same-sex love, as it doesn't really bother anyone else. As an example, Pandora mentions, while seated in the helicopter, that a lesbian doesn't make another woman who isn't a lesbian into one just because she falls in love with a heterosexual woman. Camilla completely agrees with Pandora that it doesn't always make sense what people find attractive or repulsive. Suddenly, Pandora stiffens and involuntarily looks out the window. They've long since left the metropolis behind and have been in the helicopter for about an hour. But Pandora can't shake the feeling that she's overlooked something. Then she suddenly sees it again. A pitch-black city, as if blackened by soot, rises in the distance in the middle of the ocean. Even from this incredible distance, this black city exudes significant chaos energy. Pandora can't say exactly what it is, but her gut tells her that this chaos zone is many times stronger than anything she has felt before. The way the city at the horizon seems to warp and the black buildings bend gives the impression of a distorted place or some kind of illusion. Ah, I see you've spotted the S-rank chaos zone, the city of lost souls. It's the only S-rank chaos zone in our country, says Mio in his typical know-it-all tone. As Pandora listens to Mio's comment about the city of lost souls, she rolls her eyes slightly, her gaze fixed on the distant, shadowy cityscape. The unsettling sight of the city lingers in her thoughts, its jagged silhouette warped as if by an unseen force, radiating an ominous pulse of chaos energy. The sight raises a lingering question in Pandora's mind. How do such chaos zones even come to exist? While her understanding of chaos energy surpasses that of most, she knows it remains incomplete. Lost in her musings, Pandora barely notices Camilla's curious glances. The faint hum of the helicopter rotor shifts as the aircraft slows, the thrum of its engine gradually fading. A sudden voice, calm yet commanding, resonates in Pandora's helmet. You are now being dropped into your designated territory. The rules of the game are straightforward. Protect your artifact and claim the artifacts of other teams. Each team consists of 20 participants, and there are 10 teams in total. You have 3 choices. 1. Defend your artifact with all your might. 2. Invade enemy territories to capture their artifacts and return them to your base. 3. Or ensure every artifact is lost, achieving a universal stalemate. If all artifacts remain in their starting positions and no team moves, every team will win. However, if 2 or more artifacts are brought to one location, that spot will be marked on the map. The team holding the most artifacts at the end will be declared the winner. Beware, though. If your artifact is lost while another team retains theirs, your team will be eliminated. Let the game begin. Pandora barely has time to process the rules when a holographic arrow shoots into the air above her, its shimmering beam flickering briefly before stabilizing. It marks the location of her team's artifact, a beacon pointing toward the rooftop of a nearby skyscraper. The simplicity of the rules contrasts with the complexity of the situation. Pandora narrows her eyes, her tactical instincts kicking in. She knows full well that in such games, cooperation is as fleeting as trust. So, she mutters to herself, a battle of strategy, betrayal, and brute force. Just my kind of chaos. Camilla steps up beside her, an excited glint in her eyes. Looks like we'll have to be smart about this. What's the plan, Captain? Pandora smirks, already formulating a strategy. First, we secure the artifact. Then we see who's foolish enough to challenge us.
Now I lay you down to sleep. Pray the Lord don't fuck with me. You're a wolf among the sheep, and I was sent to call the weak. So go and cross yourself, but don't cross me. I don't subscribe to your philosophy. If there's a hell, I hope that you're scared, 'cause I know I'm gonna see you there. Every time you open your mouth, you burn a page from the book. You seem to care so much about it, yet you misunderstood every single verse. You only stick with what hurts, spreading your lies to make the lives of others that much worse. You're spreading hellfire, you're spreading hellfire.
And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and consider sharing my channel with your friends. In the next part of Pandora and the Eternal War, I'll tell you how the Meta Cup concludes and introduce the different classes of the Helios Academy. I hope you'll join me for that. If you click on the left side of your screen, you can watch my latest uploaded video. On the right side, you'll find a link to the playlist. At the top center of the screen, you'll see a link to my YouTube channel where you can explore all my videos. I hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye.